Now, the talk was put on by UW's Federation of Students and a Canadian youth group.
This is one of the most disgraceful pieces of journalism I've probably ever seen. Nicole Lampa refused to talk to me on camera, and later, after watching the program she put together, I asked her why she didn't at least give the name of my youth group who arranged the whole event in the first place. She told me she was under the impression that my youth group's name was A Canadian Youth Group, and then quickly hung up the phone. In fact, the most coverage that my cause had received from the whole event was published in the local Waterloo paper called The Record, where it was written that, and of course there was that one passionately idealistic student who grilled Martin relentlessly until the microphone practically had to be wrestled from his hands. By the way, I'm not a student at the University of Waterloo. I can't afford it. But again, poor journalism. So here we have the guy who writes the laws, and one of the guys who abuses the laws, which is bankrupting the entire country, getting together in his $66 million private resort, in secret, along with other bankers who admit major crises are used to form a one-world government, ruled by bankers and elitists. You see, Paul Martin doesn't care if he helps bankrupt the people of Canada, because he's already made his millions from the guy who practically made him Prime Minister. But instead of exposing this, these two news agencies did the opposite and made Paul Martin look more like a saint. This is the opposite of information. Misinformation. So now do you see why the owners of the media attend these secret meetings as well? They don't want to expose the truth, because if they did, they would expose themselves. Take this copy of Reader's Digest. The Canadians You Trust. Let's check out who made the list. Stephen Harper, number 8. Michael J. Fox is number 5. Wayne Gretzky, number 12. Queen of England is number 2. She's not even Canadian. But I guess simple facts don't matter when you're a major publishing company. Number 1 was David Suzuki, Mr. If you can't beat Walmart, join them. Bob Ray is number 29. Shania Twain, 30. Don Cherry is number 14. What's going on here? How was this list even put together? If you read the fine print, it states, to conduct our trust poll, we commissioned an independent research firm, Harris Decima, to survey a representative sample of nearly 1,200 English-speaking Canadian adults. Respondents were presented with a list containing the names and photographs of 100 prominent Canadians and asked to rate each according to trustworthiness. They were then asked to select which personality they trusted the most, giving us our list of the 50 most trusted Canadians. Wow! What an informative study. That's just a loophole to get away with publishing a magazine titled The Canadians You Trust, and then putting Stephen Harper and other corrupt politicians on the list. Because what they should have called the magazine was Canadians Nearly 1,200 People Trust, from a pre-selected media-biased list of figures used only to spread propaganda. I mean, who has the power to tell you who to trust, other than yourself? Well, apparently Reader's Digest. But wait a minute, I thought CNN was most trusted. Maybe that was based on another elaborate trust poll, where CNN wasn't on the list. Here's a quick word fact. The literal translation for the word entertainment is diversion. Ah, it all makes perfect sense now. Because people are more worried about how Gen still can't get it together, inch by inch these global elitists are getting closer to their goal of world domination. Thanks, Rick. You know, I always had a feeling you would be involved in the destruction of the world. The media is doing such a great job at convincing everyone that politics in Canada is as simple as red versus blue. When in reality, as we've seen behind closed doors, they all belong to the same clubs, all serving the same corporate masters. Consider politicians like a box of Smarties. All different colors on the outside, but on the inside, they're all full of the same crap. When people get sick of red, blue steps in to give the illusion of democracy. This game goes back and forth for years and years and years. Sometimes we get a little bit of hope from orange or green, but because they don't have the powerful corporate backing behind them like blue and red, they'll never get into power unless they sell their souls as well. It's not so bad. It's a little bit sour, but oh, well, maybe these ones aren't as bad. But democracy isn't only a joke in Canada. Let's hear a good knee slapper from Al Gore, former vice president of the superpower of the world, the United States.
I am Al Gore. I used to be the next president of the United States of America. I don't find that particularly funny.
Pretty good material, eh? He just cracked a joke about the widely known fact that George Bush Jr. had rigged the 2000 U.S. election. That's a former vice president of the United States joking about democracy not working. And one has to seriously wonder, why didn't Al Gore make a movie about the U.S. election being rigged by the biggest laughingstock president the world has ever seen? I mean, to me, democracy being a joke is much scarier than climate change, especially since that he would have had much more power to fix things as president than just some guy with a slideshow. But it didn't really bother Al Gore since he's in the club as well. So it isn't his position to actually do what's right, but rather to do what he's told. Which is why the joke is funny. The real sad thing, though, is the audience thinks they're laughing with him. This is the reason why pro-voting ads are sponsored by the government and are practically shoved down our throats. They want us to play into the game that gives them the power to control us. Look, if voting really made a difference, our monetary system would have been fixed by now. So without further ado, let us introduce the new Smartie of Canada, Count Ignatieff.
But he's kind of quirky. Like, as a human rights expert, there's a lot of his writing that suggests that some people are entitled to human rights and others aren't. But the essence of human rights is everybody's entitled to human rights. So it comes from his experience of being Russian royalty. His grandfather was an aide to Tsar Nicholas. And one of the only families that escaped from Russia from the Bolsheviks was the Ignatieffs. And he's got this kind of aristocratic, almost royalty attitude.
Michael's grandfather, Count Paul Ignatieff, was senior advisor to Emperor Nicholas II of Russia. He also served as his last Minister of Education. Why the last? Because as a result of the Russian Revolution in 1918, the whole royal family was arrested and executed. Except for Michael Ignatieff's grandfather, who was apparently released by a sympathetic guard and fled to Canada. Count Ignatieff's son George grew up to become a Rhodes Scholar, worked in the Department of External Affairs, became a permanent representative to NATO, also became Canadian ambassador and president of the UN Security Council. Finally, when Michael was born, opportunities were paved in front of him by his family, and he was able to attend and later teach in universities across the world, such as Oxford, Harvard, Cambridge, University of London, and a lot more. As a matter of fact, Michael Ignatieff has spent half of his life outside of Canada becoming educated and prepared for bigger things. In 2004, Ian Davey, son of the Canadian Senator Keith Davey, and a lawyer, Daniel Brock, both liberal organizers, went to the United States where Ignatieff was teaching at Harvard still, and told him that it was time for him to establish himself in Canadian politics in order to become Prime Minister. And in an ultra-rare occasion, Ignatieff was crowned Liberal leader half a year before the Liberal Convention was held. But again, this shouldn't be a surprise to any of you by now, since we know they're all buddies behind the scenes. Ignatieff released a book this year in April called True Patriot Love, in a sad attempt to look like a Canadian patriot. But just writing a book and declaring something doesn't make it true. You can't judge a book by its cover. But it does conveniently add to the deception. So as Canadians, we've lost ownership of our money and our democracy. Well, at least we own the largest brewery in Canada. Well, second largest brewery. Third largest? Well, who needs beer when I got my Tim's anyway? What the? How about our railroads? Highways? What the fuck? The construction and land value of Highway 407 comes to $107 billion, which was then sold by Bilderberg Premier of Ontario, Mike Harris, for $3 billion to Austrian and Spanish corporations in order to generate money for tax cuts. So wait a minute. We sold something worth $100 billion for $3 billion to save money. Well, that just makes perfect sense.
Because all that $3.5 billion did, it just bought down a deficit number.
Yeah.
In 1 year, I mean, it was one year where you get the spike and you get the benefit, and that's it. I mean, talk about short-term thinking.
The 99-year lease contract allows these foreign corporations to charge us whatever they want to drive on our own highways. The government is not allowed to build a competing highway as well. Well, there's got to be some things that we still own. Okay, let's look back at what we sold again.